Now we've got a great guest on for you guys, a guy I've been meaning to talk to for a couple of days because he wrote a really interesting piece about how Obama's speech in Cairo might make us safer, actually. He's Matthew Alexander, and he's the author of How to Break a Terrorist. Matthew, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thanks for the invitation.
We appreciate you coming on. So, first, so the audience understands, what would you know about how to break a terrorist?
Well, I spent almost 5 months in Iraq in 2006 at the height of the violence, conducting interrogations. I did over 300 interrogations of high-level members of al-Qaeda and supervised more than 1,000 interrogations, and it was my interrogation team that found Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who was the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq.
So obviously you must have done a lot of waterboarding to get that information.
No, we didn't do any waterboarding. In fact, I discouraged my team from using any methods that would be considered abuse. I forbid them from using those types of methods, and I discouraged them from using methods that were even harsh, because I felt those methods that even are legal and allowable underneath the current Army Field Manual are counterproductive to convincing somebody to cooperate.
I don't understand how you can collect intelligence without torture. Dick Cheney tells me it's not possible. I don't know how you managed to do it. So talk to me about Zarqawi a little bit. He was the main guy in Iraq that we were going to go get. We're looking for him for a long time, and you guys got the intelligence that led us to where he is. Break that down for me. How did it actually work? Who did you capture, and how did they wind up giving you the information? What was the information?
Well, let's start with Zarqawi. Zarqawi is a worse terrorist than Osama bin Laden ever has been. Zarqawi had the blood of tens of thousands of people on his hands. He was the author of the civil war in Iraq. He was the one behind the Golden Dome Mosque bombing, which set off the civil war between Sunni and Shia. He was the one that attacked the UN headquarters and forced them to leave Iraq. He bombed hotels in Jordan. So he was, obviously preached a very extreme form of fundamentalist Islam. And so he was one of the most notorious mass murderers of a generation, really. And the way that we found him, believe it or not, was by using good old relationship-building approaches that World War II interrogators used to great success. And we used those approaches, but my group specifically, we had a few of us that had been criminal investigators, and so we started to interweave techniques, non-coercive, that police investigators, criminal detectives, law enforcement officers here in the United States use every day to solve criminal cases. And by putting those two things together and tailoring it for the culture in which we were operating, we were able to put together a string of successes that led directly to Zarqawi.
So was there a critical guy that you guys captured that gave you information on his whereabouts?
Yeah, there was this guy that we captured in a group, and I call him Abu Haider. And this guy was the Hannibal Lecter of al-Qaeda. I mean, this guy literally, if you've seen Silence of the Lambs, this was the Anthony Hopkins of al-Qaeda. And he spoke fluent English, he had a British accent, he was extremely manipulative, he was very intelligent. And a couple of what I call old school interrogators had tried interrogating him for about 3 weeks using the old methods, which were based on harsh techniques. And they got nowhere, and they decided to ship this guy off and get rid of him and send him through the court system. In about 6 hours before he was sent off, I had a chance to sit down with him. In the first 5 hours and 50 minutes, we talked about culture, we talked about religious philosophy. I brought a copy of my Quran into the interrogation booth, and we talked about Islamic philosophy. We talked about Ultimate Fighting Championships. We talked about sports. We talked about a lot of things that I just used to build rapport, stroke his ego, and get him also to respect me and my knowledge of his culture and his religion. And in the end, I offered him a deal where he could secretly work with us instead of al-Qaeda, and he accepted that. And it took a little more than that. I don't want to give away the ending, but took a little bit more trickery on my part to convince him to give us to Zarqawi, but that was how it all started.
Well, it's funny as you describe that. It's certainly something that some politicians here in the U.S. would say is appeasing the terrorist. I mean, you're having a pleasant conversation with him. You're trying to understand his culture. They say here that we should make no effort to understand our culture, that, you know, that all these people understand is violence. But you're saying through your direct experience that is absolutely not the case.
Well, people who don't have experience and don't understand about interrogations, people who haven't done it, is they don't understand that the interrogation booth is not the place for violence. It's not the place where you carry out a military mission to either capture or eliminate somebody. That's where interrogation booth is, where you carry out cooperation. You carry out negotiation. It's not a place for dominance. It's not a place for retaliation. And so when former Vice President Dick Cheney says, you know, that we got to work the dark side, or we have to, we can't coddle terrorists, or that these methods kept us safe, he's misunderstanding the very nature of interrogations, which is about cooperation. And you can't get that cooperation unless you establish trust. And one of the worst things we can do that ruins trust, not only for past interrogations, but for future interrogations, is not live up to our American principles. When we use torture and abuse, future detainees will not trust us, and they won't trust anything we say, and they'll be less likely to cooperate with us. And that's just one way that torture and abuse doesn't keep us safe. In fact, it does just the opposite.
We're talking to Matthew Alexander. He's the author of How to Break a Terrorist. His team did over 1,000 interrogations in Iraq, and one of those led to the capture of Zarqawi. One more question on Zarqawi before we go to Obama's speech. What was the actual intelligence that you guys got? I mean, was it where he was staying? How did that work in actually getting him?
The guy that I was described earlier, the Hannibal Lecter of Al-Qaeda, if you will, Abu Haider, told us that if we wanted to find Zarqawi, we had to find Abu Haider's best friend, who was his spiritual advisor. This was a man named Al-Rahman. He was a high-level Sunni sheikh, and he lived in Baghdad, and he told us where to find him and how to know when he would go to visit Zarqawi. And we followed his instructions. We went and found Al-Rahman, and we followed him. He did a car switch, which we expected, and we saw him pull into Zarqawi's house, and we bombed it and killed Zarqawi.
Wow. Man, the book is amazing. It's called How to Break a Terrorist. We'll definitely put it up on the YoungTurks.com in our library. You could get it from there. All right, now on to Obama's speech in Cairo. Why do you think that was so helpful to gathering intelligence and in our fight against terrorism?
Yeah, people always criticize the coddling terrorists, or saying that relationship-building approaches take too long. I could walk into the interrogation booth, rehearse, recite a line out of the Quran that I've memorized, and build a relationship in about 10 seconds of respect. When President Obama recited the Quran in his speech, he showed a tremendous amount of respect for the religion, a tremendous amount of respect for the culture. And that goes towards reestablishing that trust that's necessary to convince detainees to cooperate. Now, critics are going to say that hardened Al-Qaeda members hate us so much that they don't care what we do. They're going to attack us. And to that, I would say it's false. I challenge anybody who believes that to pick up a copy of my book, sit down with me and my interrogations team in the interrogation booth, and go face-to-face with hardened Al-Qaeda members, men who were literally chopping people's heads off, men who were sending out suicide bombers against civilian targets, and listen to how we convinced them to cooperate. We did it by not stereotyping them, by not allowing ourselves to be fooled into thinking that everybody who joins Al-Qaeda is a diehard fanatic who can never be brought back, or this terrible terminology, the worst of the worst. I'm not even sure what that means as an intelligence official. What I can say is all of these people, almost 99.99% of them, can be brought back from that ideology.
And that's not even talking about the people in the middle who haven't even turned to Al-Qaeda yet. So
Exactly.
I know. And that's, of course, who he's addressing as well. Matthew, we're unfortunately out of time, but everybody check out the book, How to Break a Terrorist by Matthew Alexander, and thanks so much for being on. We appreciate it.